Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world, or future people on the recordings. You're all very, very welcome. Please make sure if you've joined and are watching a video, make sure you click on the video to share it with other people. Click on the notifications bell to make sure you get any future videos that we do, and also, just share the videos with your friends, as I say. This morning, looks like my photo's frozen, but never mind. I think you can still hear me. I'm going to bring on my friend and colleague, Bridget McGowan Hawkins, to introduce herself and what she does. So, Bridget, you're very welcome.
Thank you so much, Christopher. Really excited to have this conversation with you today. So my name is Bridget McGowan Hawkins. I'm an award-winning international professional speaker, author, and publisher. It was the speaking that led to me becoming an author, that led to me becoming a publisher. And I didn't realize, Christopher, that, that should have been the first step because I absolutely have fallen in love with publishing.
Well, maybe you'd like to sort of talk a little bit about that journey. I
Sure.
mean, what got you into speaking, and then what persuaded you that publishing would be a good route for you?
Speaking started probably around the age of 10 or 11 as the church school secretary at Pleasant Hill United Methodist Church. I tell you, I could not wait for Sunday mornings to come. I would rehearse everything I had to say. Very small congregation, but I was ready to give the title of the lesson, the focused scripture of the day, and how much we collected in the collection plate. I was ready for that. I mean, seriously speaking, I think that's where it started. But officially, it was 2001 when I started speaking on a professional level, if you will. And it just grew from there, whether it was teaching, presenting at conferences. I was also a faculty development consultant for an ed tech company for a little bit over 7 years or so. I got laid off from that position. My entire team got laid off in 2016. And I said, you know what? You've been doing this speaking thing for quite some time. But more importantly, Christopher, it wasn't just I enjoyed it and I was doing it for some time, but my audiences seemed to enjoy my speaking. So I said, you know what, girl, you can figure this out. And I became
And,
a full-time speaker. That
and
was
what,
2000.
what,
What was that?
what, what topics did you speak on when you were speaking?
Right. Well, when I was in the ed tech space and a faculty development consultant, I was spending time at colleges, universities, 2-year, 4-year
Okay.
campuses, and even tech schools and career schools. And so the topics would vary, but they all focused on how to be an incredible educator when you are at the front of a room where you might have 2 or 3 generations in the classroom. So it focused on active learning, engaging instructional methods, andragogy, which is the teaching of adults, as opposed to pedagogy, which is the teaching of children,
That's
and
interesting.
best practices.
No, that's interesting. So I guess you started off teaching or lecturing, and that developed into a more abstract, speaking role at conferences and trade fairs and things, and then that developed into publishing. Would you say that's fair?
Absolutely. I I initially was going to be on your evening news. I got my bachelor's degree in communications. And I was going to be that anchor that came on at 6 p.m. and gave you all of the highs, lows, and good and bad stuff. But I didn't end up doing that. However, I went into teaching and didn't know a thing about teaching. So, Christopher, I found myself going to conferences and seminars and webinars, everything I could to figure out this thing called teaching. And as
Mm.
I was sitting in the audience, I said to myself, I'm listening to these speakers, I can do that. Heck, I can do better than that. So
Okay.
that's where it just, it started and it evolved from there with me learning about the education space and
Okay.
higher ed and how to be effective. And then I thought, I'm learning and growing and I can share with others and I can do it in an effective fashion.
So where did the eureka moment come to move into publishing?
Oh, yes. So, like all speakers across the globe, you submit proposals to speak at conferences. I'm no different. I submitted a proposal to speak at a conference that was taking place in DC in 2019. Yes. One of the speakers was Oprah Winfrey. The
Wow.
conference asked, I know, right? Wow. Do you have a book to sell in the bookstore, Bridget? And I thought, no, I don't have one right now. This was March of 2019. The
Oh,
conference,
okay.
well, what was that?
I was going to say that's quite recent. I mean, relatively so, given that you've been speaking for such a long time. So,
Exactly right. It's nuts. I had been speaking for 18 years at that point with no book. And the conference was taking place in 2 short months. And Christopher, I said, I don't have a book right now, but I will have one in time for that conference.
oh, wow.
The gall, the gall. But I had been blogging, creating all kinds of content. And so I felt confident that I had enough content to develop that book. And
Right.
so self-published the book. It was a success, won an award. And then later that year in December of 2019, I decided, hey, let's do this for others.
So, did you, when you were self-publishing, did you have friends who you could rely on, or did you have to do a lot of research? I mean, how did you go about that for yourself?
Had to do a lot of research. I didn't have any friends who were publishing books, right? uh, I had one girlfriend, actually, she's my very best friend. She had self-published a few of her own books.
Okay.
And so, asked her a few questions, but I didn't bug her too much because that wasn't her forte. She just self-published some books. And so I just sat down and did the work. I did the research. I found the experts. I found the editors, typesetters, designers. But it was nice to have one or two friends who were in that self-publishing space to bounce
Yes.
questions and ideas off of, but self-taught.
Had you come across, there's a global organization called the Alliance of Independent Authors. I don't know whether you've come across them, but they are very helpful for helping people who are self-published people to find, relevant connections. So if you're not aware of them, I'll put you in touch with them. It's, they've got a lot of people based in the States as well.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and I'm not being fair. And if anyone from the Independent Book Publishers Association is listening and wants to come beat me up, I'm fine with that for being remiss in acknowledging IBPA has been a tremendous resource. Pub West, which I believe is becoming a part of IBPA, has been a great resource. So to be fair, but I'm saying just initially hitting the ground running.
Of course. I mean, it's great that you had the, I guess what the speaking did was give you the confidence to just go for it. Because a lot of people who just think I'd like to write a book, they wouldn't have the gumption to kind of just say, okay, that's a decision I'm going to make, and just do it.
Well, to be absolutely, fair and honest here, it was only because I had a lot of content. I had been approached before when I was teaching by textbook sales reps. I distinctly remember a few of them saying, hey, would you be interested in writing a book? And I didn't even have to think about it, Christopher. I immediately said that would be a no. I didn't think I had the content. And so because I had so much content already, that was my confidence booster, quite frankly.
So do you think that before you saw yourself as, okay, you were blogging, you were creating content, but did you have a mindset of thinking that you weren't an author? Would that be fair, or did you think you'd always like to write a book one day?
When I was blogging, I didn't think about, I'm going to, it did not enter my mind. I won't say I had any kind of blockage thinking that I couldn't do it. It just wasn't anything that was on the radar. So I know a lot of times authors will have that imposter syndrome that creeps in. And I guess because, again, I never thought about writing a book, period, full stop. I just didn't. That imposter syndrome didn't creep in. I think the confidence came from not only having all of that content that I had generated from the blog posts, newsletters, and so on, but also, and this is incredibly important for writers, Confidence in my subject matter.
Right.
If you know your stuff, you know your content, then I believe that's the starting point. Don't worry about whether anybody's going to read it. Don't worry about whether what you have to say has already been said. It hasn't been said the way you're going to say it. Don't worry about all of that stuff, the judgment. If you feel confident that you know your industry, you know your content, that's your first confidence booster, I firmly believe.
Right. So, given your own experience of not really thinking, not that you weren't confident enough to write a book, but it never actually crossed your mind. There must be loads and loads of people who are in that same position. So, when you were thinking that you might like to offer those services to other people, how did you go about finding those people? Because if they're not looking to write a book, then I guess they're quite difficult to get hold of.
Absolutely. Well, it first starts with partnerships. We cannot do anything alone. And it was so funny starting out, Christopher, because when I would share with people that I was a publisher, the response would be, but wait a minute, I thought you were a speaker. And my response was, but wait a minute, I can be more than one thing. So, in finding people who are interested in getting published, it starts with partnerships. And I'll tell you right now, partnerships with incredible ghostwriters, writing
Right.
coaches, and editors. That those partnerships have been pivotal. Pivotal. I'm combining valuable and pivotal together. So I've created a whole new word. Let's contact Miriam right now and get it added to the dictionary. They have been pivotal and they have been invaluable.
Yeah.
Those partnerships, as a matter of fact, one of those partnerships is what brought you and me together. Chrissy Doss is one of our incredible editors and proofreaders. So those professionals, ghostwriters, writing coaches, editors tend to have the people who I'm looking for, people who have incredible manuscripts and want to get published.
Right. So do you look for people who've already written something as a manuscript and then work on that? Or do you say to people who just simply had an idea that you're able at that point to help them?
Both. Naturally, we prefer someone who has a completed manuscript because then it shortens the timeline. We're a lot more focused. But at the same time, you can come to us with an idea. That's happened probably more than half the time. We'll have someone who is either a business owner, an entrepreneur, a coach, and they've got these years, if not decades, of expertise where they're thinking, I want to make this permanent. I want to have a one-stop shop, if you will, that I can provide to clients and prospects. So we work with both. If you come with just an idea, then we discuss, well, do you want to work with a ghostwriter, a writing coach, or do you want to do it alone? If you want to do it alone, that's fine too. And we have monthly calls to just kind of shepherd you along. But we work with both.
Well, the other thing about hybrid publishing as a process, and I guess it would be fair to say that a lot of your authors are non-fiction authors, particularly in the business space. They might be running a business, or they might be an entrepreneur, or they might have a high-level job in a large organization, that kind of thing, and they would like to write a book. I guess your speaking experience is really, really important, because the whole point of those kinds of authors writing a book is that they can use their speaking engagements to sell the book and use the book to promote their speaking engagement. So it's like a virtual spiral. So I'm wondering, I mean, do you, what kind of places do you now speak about the fact that you've got this publishing opportunity, and share that reality that they can also leverage the book to get more business?
So here's the wild thing, Christopher. When I speak, I tend to keep that world separate from the publishing world.
So,
And
okay,
I will have people who will stumble upon the fact that I'm a publisher. It's not that I'm hiding it, but people start to get confused.
okay,
So I have been known as a speaker far longer than I've been known as a publisher. So when
okay.
I speak, I tend to focus on those areas of effective communication, presentation skills, leadership. Those are the core messages that I focus on when I speak at conferences and for organizations. I seldom speak about publishing. It's typically in settings like this, on a podcast, in an interview, for a blog post or something along those lines. And
But
I
you,
do attend publishing centric
yes,
conferences and will present there ever so often. But I tend to keep those worlds separate for whatever
now
reason. I
you,
don't
you
want to
did
confuse people too much.
you did mention you published a book though, so I was curious as to whether or not you tell people about your book when you're speaking.
Absolutely, but I don't necessarily say I published it,
No,
right?
no,
So
no, no. I understand. I understand. That's yeah.
if they happen to dig enough, and but how often do you do that? So yes, when I'm speaking, typically, not typically, probably 99.9% of the time, it is connected to one of my books that I've published. And so absolutely, those books are sold at the back of the room in the book. Well, that's how the publishing company started, getting a book sold in the conference bookstore.
Sure.
But ever so often, there's a handful of times where somebody from my speaker world has approached me and said, "Hey, I heard you're a publisher. That's the word on the street. What's
Mhm.
up with it?" But yeah, the worlds stay pretty separate. But yes, of course, I talk about my books when I speak.
So in terms of, I mean, you're a many, you have lots of strings to your bow. You've got lots of talents. So how do you split up your time? I mean, are you, in terms of how much of a percentage are you speaking? How much are you being a publisher? How much are you doing other things that you do? I mean, how would you split up your time and your priorities?
Absolutely. It requires a team, hands down, without a doubt. But I would say publishing probably consumes about 60% of my effort and energies, and speaking consumes 40%. And here's part of the reason I started the publishing company. It was because, one, I enjoyed the process. Two, I felt like how many other people are out there like me, business owners, entrepreneurs, professional speakers, who have all of this expertise that needs to be put in a permanent place. But number three, as a professional speaker, it's not as sexy and glamorous as other speakers would have you to think it is. After you've gone through enough flight delays and cancellations and reroutings and hotels all of a sudden not having your reservation, or they're booked out and they send you to some lesser brand, don't get me started, and enough crazy Uber rides and so on, it's really not that sexy of a life. And
Okay.
so I really wanted to get off the road. And that was kind of reason number three or four for starting the
Did you
publishing
find it,
company.
I mean, did you find that family considerations built into that as well? Um,
Absolutely. I wasn't going to dive into all of that. But number one at the top of the list was my and my husband's son. So in December of 2019, he was in his first semester of kindergarten.
right.
And I felt that he needed me more. And so that was kind of number one uno reason for getting off the road as much.
Well, I guess it's important for people who might be thinking about becoming an author that it is actually something you can do from home. You don't have to be constantly traveling, which is, I guess, a good thing, especially in these days when so many companies are forcing people back into the office after COVID, aren't they? So yeah, it's something to bear in mind. So we've come all this way in this chat, and we haven't yet told people what hybrid publishing is. So maybe you could talk about that, Bridget.
Hybrid publishing is where you take the best of a couple of different publishing worlds and put them together. Excuse me. So with self-publishing, as the author, you are 100% in control of everything. And that's kind of a good feeling for some people, but for others, it can be overwhelming. I
Yeah.
don't know what a good cover design is. I don't know if the outline of this book makes sense. I don't know if this is going to sell. And then when it comes to traditional publishing, the best of that world is, you're going to have experts who know about typesetting, who know about typography, who know about color combinations, who
Yeah.
know what they know, all the things. So with hybrid publishing, we take that great part of self-publishing where you're in control, and we take those great parts of traditional publishing of, you're going to have a quality product, and we put them together, and that's how hybrid comes about. Hybrid
Right.
publishing comes about because the author, at least at Press 49, is the boss. You
Right.
tell us what you want, and we, like traditional publishers, give you our expert opinion. Now, if you want something that's counter to what readers expect and anticipate in publishing, we'll let you know. Uh, we love your idea, love your input. However, based on our expertise, ABC, the choice is yours. And so we're always going to make, and authors typically go with our recommendation because they want to put out a product that is aligned with industry standards. But that's hybrid publishing, the best of a couple of different worlds in the publishing space, where it really fits the author who just doesn't have the time or the interest to
Yes.
become an expert in this very foreign space. I mean, they're expert accountants, they're expert consultants. They don't want to become publishers. Press 49 has you covered.
So which parts of the process do you think people need the most help with, in your experience?
Ooh, the whole process.
Well, I know, but I mean, there are certain things. I mean, for example, in my opinion, one of the things, although authors these days have to do a lot of their own marketing and promotion and things, but it can be helpful to have somebody that you sit alongside to help you do that, or maybe advise on things like distribution. And I know that it's easier these days with things like print on demand, and getting, people like Ingram Spark, for example, to send things to people in the post. But people won't know that. So it's like having, I think one of the main things about having a professional or somebody that's experienced to help you is that you can be their buddy. You can kind of guide them and give them advice.
Right, right. We totally can be their guide on the side if we act as their publishing consultant and they publish under their own imprint, or we can just be their full blown
Yeah,
publisher. But to seriously answer your question, there are a few areas where I think are the greatest challenges for authors. One of them is going to be skipping that editing process.
yeah,
And see, editing is not just editing, because you can put it out there. And I even blogged about this a year or two ago on LinkedIn, where you will say, I need an editor. But there's developmental editing,
sure,
mechanical editing, and then there's copy editing and proofreading. And all
yeah,
of those are different. And all of those, because they're different, require a different skill set and a different price tag. So
yeah,
a big mistake I will see authors make is they'll self-edit. And so we know this from when we were in school, when we were edit our own papers. You're reading it as your brain knows it should be written, and someone else reads it and there's a missing word or something's misspelled or something like that. So hiring professional editors for all of those steps. At Press 49, at least 3 different editors will look at your manuscript. A developmental editor to look at the big picture and see how your words are flowing. We're going to have a mechanical editor, make sure that all mistakes are captured and fixed, grammatical, punctuation, mechanical errors. And then we're going to have a third person, a proofreader, who makes sure every I is dotted and every T is crossed. And then something else that self-publishing authors will make a big mistake on, and that's neglecting design and layout.
I was going to
I'm
say
telling
that's a big thing too. Yeah,
Christopher, I've had people come to me and then they decide to pass on our services and do it themselves. And you can tell a self-published cover from a mile away. And then and you just don't want that. You want people to look at your book and not be able to tell if it was published by one of the big five or a hybrid publishing company. And that's the case with us. And then finally, like you said, marketing. Authors will underestimate marketing. If you want your book to sell, you've got to talk about it.
That's
And
right.
if you're not talking about it, you're not going to see any royalties coming in.
Well, the thing about layouts is that what you don't want, and what people don't realize, is that things like widows and orphans look absolutely terrible. And
in a book, they look terrible in a book. In the context of a book, widows and orphans are cute.
No. Just to explain, a widow is a hanging line, and an orphan is a hanging word at the end of a. So you might start a new page with like a single word, and that just looks horrible. And things like starting a chapter on a new page and all of that kind of thing. And pagination, I mean, that's an important thing too. Maybe the last question about publishing. I mean, like, you would agree that hiring a proper book jacket designer is very important, because the book cover is really your advert, your first advert for selling the book.
Absolutely. The cover is what is going to have people say, ooh, I need to check out the table of contents. And then from there, even with the table of contents, that's a mistake authors will make in terms of not scripting their table of contents in a way that makes people say, ooh, I need to thumb through a few pages. Ooh, I need to check out chapter 4. What's that about? So it first starts with that cover design. And I kind of skipped a step in there. The front cover should have people say, ooh, let me check out the back.
Yes.
And then what's on the back cover has them say, ooh, let me open this up and scan the table of contents. But it all starts with that front cover. And let me be very clear. When I self-published my first book back in 2019, that cover was a big mistake. I would not, absolutely. It won an award, it sold out, but it still needed work. But I was self-publishing and learning the industry in a short amount of time.
Well, the beauty of that is, I mean, having sold out especially, is that having realized it wasn't a great cover, if you ever reprint it, you just do a new cover for it.
Well, it's in its second edition, so it's got probably, I know, more than 50% more content. The first edition had about 40,000 words. This one has over 60,000 words. So whole new edition, whole new design, all that good stuff. Everything that I learned about publishing.
There we go. Okay, well, we're coming towards the end, but one thing I always ask my guests, because this is the Yola Bockaflod podcast. Yola Bockaflod, for those who don't know, is an Icelandic tradition that's been going for about 80 years, since the end of the Second World War, where people, the book trade in Iceland publishes books. They all come out at the same time. They all get published in a catalogue that gets sent to everybody in the country. Christmas Eve comes, hand out the presents, eat the meal, hand out the presents, and everybody then spends the rest of Christmas Eve reading. So it's kind of like this amazing tradition, which I promote through my company, Yola Bockaflod, to get everybody else around the world interested in integrating Yola Bockaflod as part of the way they celebrate Christmas. And as part of that, I have a digital catalogue which recommends book recommendations. So I always ask my guests if they have a book that they would like to recommend to the people listening or watching this podcast. So do you have a favorite book, Bridget, you'd like to promote?
So a book I would highly recommend is by James Clear, Atomic Habits. And I'll bet others have recommended it as well. But what I like so much about it is it focuses on small, actionable steps. And that's so important for authors. Writing a book feels like you're eating an elephant. And it's like, how do you do this? But because I had done that small, actionable step of blogging and creating all kinds of content, that's how I was able to get to a book. James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, focuses on how do you create transformational results with achieving all kinds of goals. So that's one that I have on my shelf right across the way, as a matter of fact, and would highly recommend it.
Okay. And how have you found it helpful personally? Is that something you use all the time, or is it, or was it just inspirational at the time you read it?
So I will say, I don't think I consciously use it, but subconsciously, I do believe I use it. So let me tell you very quickly, I decided last Monday, the first Monday of the year, I decided, hey, I am going to fast every Monday until noon local time. And then today, it's only the second Monday of the year. I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to do this. And then I stopped myself and I said, come on. This is something small you can do. And by the end of the year, you're going to be so proud of yourself. Now, consciously, I was not thinking about Atomic Habits, but quite honestly, after having read the book, and because that is the book's philosophy, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fail and fall to the level of your systems. I was getting ready to fall to this pathetic system of, oh my goodness, I can't do this, to, wait a minute, on, girl, get it together. So I believe, subconsciously integrated into my personal and professional life on a regular basis.
Well, that's always good with business books and philosophical books like that, where you can, absorb the lessons without really having to go and reread the book. That's a sign of a good book. I have a friend who's a business consultant. She teaches on the idea of what's the least you can do to make a difference.
Yes, it's incredible. It's about embracing discipline, building positive habits, and just taking control of your own journey, hands down.
So, Bridget, in this recommendation, when I publish it in the bulletin, in this catalog, I always promote the person who's made the recommendation. So I will be promoting you, but what would you like me to showcase of all these different things that you do? What would be the thing that you'd like to advertise?
Ooh, without a doubt, press49.com. If you are an author who's already published before, but you've got additional expertise, you want to come out with a new edition, or if you're like me, that first cover was a hot mess.com and you want to refresh and revamp, please visit press49.com and we offer a no obligation consultation where you are able to discuss your publishing ideas, think through some themes and thoughts. Would absolutely love to connect with you. So that's one thing, have a conversation with me. The second thing is grab our free guide on what every author needs to know to get published. And that is at press49.com. So press49.com, you don't need any other website saved in bookmarks, but press49.com. Get that free guide on what you need to know to get published and book a call with me. Let's talk.
So is that the best way that people can get hold of you, or how do you like people to contact you?
Sure. So if you're wanting, because I know people like to just follow you stealthily on social media, and I'm cool with that. Or other people want to get on Zoom. The best way to get in touch with me is to visit connectwithb.com. All common spelling, connectwithb.com. Okay. All of my social media handles are there, email addresses, phone numbers, books. However you want to connect and be in community with me is at that site, connectwithb.com.
Okay, well, that's terrific. So thank you so much, Bridget. We come to the end of our conversation. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. And do remember to like the video, our conversation, and also to share it with people around your networks. So until next time, thank you very much. And also extend my thanks once more to Bridget for being such a great guest.
Thank you.
Bye now, and see you next time.